Alright, so today we're going to get started on changing winter tires to our summer tires. So I still have my winter tires on. Junior, what are you doing underneath there? Okay. No, we got lots to do before you... Okay, anyway. I'm going to show you how to swap your tires. I could use the lifts on our shop here. However, that's not really going to teach you how to use the equipment that came with your vehicle. So I'm going to use the actual jack and the equipment that came with the vehicle right here. I'm going to show you what that's all about. We're going to have a look at my summer tires and see what kind of condition they're in before we put them on, so we can have a good assessment of which tire might need to go where. Sometimes your summer tires might wear differently because you might have an alignment issue, or you may be hauling a heavy trailer. So your summer tires may not wear evenly, so you might want to rotate them around to make sure that they wear evenly depending on where they were last summer. We're going to have a look at my tires. We're going to get my winter tires off. Junior, what? Okay, stop. Anyway, we're going to get started. Junior, stop. All right, so this is the equipment that came with my truck to lift the vehicle whenever you have a flat tire or a situation where you need to lift the vehicle. And in this case, of course, we are going to be swapping my winter tires for my summer tires. So this is the jack that came with it. It's a very simple jack. It is a screw type mechanism inside here that is raised and lowered by turning this big knob. Now, inside the knob, there is a slot that fits one of the extensions that comes in your kit. And there's several extensions. Usually there's 3 extensions, sometimes there's only 2. But in this case there are 3 extensions, and you can see one of the extensions is the first extension that actually hooks into the slot in here. So it'll hook like this, and once it's in there, it doesn't come out as long as you don't put it at an angle again. So once it's in there, it'll stay in there, and you can actually move the jack around when you need to underneath the vehicle with this still in here. Once this is in, then you can either raise or lower it by either turning left or right. And you need to put the other extensions on if you're going to go farther and farther underneath the vehicle. There are certain lift points in the vehicle which we will get to. Each of these extensions goes together quite simply. There is a male and a female end, and you can see there's a little spring-loaded pin in here that once you click it in there, it locks into place. To remove it, you press the pin, and out it comes. The very last one that you put in, once you've done all your extensions, you're going to have one of these left over like this, and this is the one that will then go onto your tire iron. And you're simply going to do the same thing. You're going to push the pin and push it past there, and then it locks into place. Once you have this locked like this, then you can turn the tire iron and then raise and lower the jack, whatever you need to do. Actually, I should have put this the other way because it'll be a little bit easier. I put it in like this. Then I have my handle like this, and then I go up and down. Okay, that's how you use the jack. Very simple. Now, some vehicles come with a scissor jack like this, not a straight jack like this. So a scissor jack works the same way, except it has this hook on the end, this loop, and you simply, instead of having this type of a system that hooks into here, you will have a hook that hooks around here like this and grabs onto this, and as you turn left and right, it will raise and lower the scissor jack. These are 100% safe. They cannot come down in here. They're not hydraulically filled or filled with air at all. It is a mechanical jack, so it is 100% safe as long as you put it in the right spot. You can see that this scissor jack here has slots in it that are specially designed for the vehicle that this came with. And this one happened to come off of an F-150. This is the one that comes from my vehicle, so I would not use this on my vehicle because it doesn't have these slots. All right? So there's a particular spot in the owner's manual that tells you where you should put this jack, and that's where we're going to put it. Okay, now before I put my summer tires on, I want to actually inspect them. And there's a couple things I want to look for. One is I want to look for uneven wear across the tire. That one side of the tire might be wearing faster than the other side. The other thing I want to look for is cupping. That might happen when I have a misalignment. That means the tire is wobbling a little bit. I may have a bad ball joint. There might be something going on with the front end of my vehicle that I might not notice until I take the tires off. So I'm going to look for cupping that might happen in the tire. I'm going to look for uneven wear, and I'm actually going to check the tread depth to see what percentage of tread I still have left on my tire. I'm going to use this tire gauge, this tire tread depth gauge. Now I hope we can see it here. You can see that it has all these numbers on the side, one set of numbers in white and the other set of numbers in neon kind of a green. The numbers in white are in standard measurements in 32nds of an inch, that's 32 of an inch, and the other measurements are in metric in millimeters. Now most people still use the standard measurement to measure the depth of the tread in their tires, so we're going to continue to use that. And the way we use this is very simple. It has the center pin just kind of moves in and out, and as the center pin moves in or out, of course it's going to register the depth of the tread. You can see that the pin sticks out here, and the flat portion of the body then will rest against the outer tread. The inner pin goes right to the middle of the tire, and the outer casing goes to the tread. Once we have an accurate measurement of that, we can take it and have a look at it and see how many 32nds of an inch are left in the tire. Now most tires when they're brand new will be 14, 15, 32nds of an inch deep. And if we move our gauge, you're going to see that 14, 32nds of an inch is about that deep. So about that much tread is on a brand new tire. Now once the tire starts to wear and more of the tread is gone, if we got to, let's say, 7/32nds of an inch, which is right about there. So that's 7/32nds of an inch. If there was that much tread left on the tire, then we would say that there's 50% wear left on the tire. However, you don't want to get right down to zero before you change your tires. So 7 out of 14, even though it might be 50% wear, we don't want to go below 2 or 3 32nds of an inch before we want to change our tires. Why? Because there's so little tread left on the tire that if you encountered water, like puddles of water on the highway, if you're driving heavy rain, that tire is just going to act like a hydroplane, and it's just going to ride on top of the water. It's not going to have any ability to shed water away from the tire. So even though there might be 7/32nds left on the tire and there might be 50% left on it, doesn't necessarily mean we could still drive it for twice as long as we had them on in the first place. Okay? Now having said that, let's actually do a measurement of my tires. Alright, so let's check the tread depth on these tires here. So these are my summer tires. I want to check the tread depth on all 4 of them. And again, I'm looking for uneven wear or cupping or anything that looks a little bit unusual with the wear of my tire. So I'm going to push my post out. So I have lots of room to push the center pin down. Put it in between the lugs. Push the body down until it encounters the tread. Lift it up and record my measurement. Now my measurement looks like it's right on 6/32nds. Which, again, if my tires were 14 or 15 32nds when they were brand new, that means they would have been about this deep. You can see that there's a considerable amount of wear that's gone on these tires. Now, 6/32nds isn't completely bald. As you can see, there's still, a fair amount of tread left. Not a lot, but a fair amount. I can still drive on these tires. However, I wouldn't drive on them for much more than maybe 2 or 3 months in the summer here before I would put new tires on. 6/32nds is not bald, but it's not a whole lot of tread left. Now, I'm going to do the same thing and check all the tires on my rims to make sure that all of my tires are right around the same depth. I don't want to be driving on tires that Let's say I have one tire that's only 3 30-seconds, then I would change the whole set. So I'm just going to quickly test each one of the tires. That one's at 6. This one's at 6. And this one's also at 6. So they're all wearing perfectly evenly. I'm also doing just a visual check, and I can see that there's no cupping. There's no uneven wear. If I really wanted to, I could check the depth on both sides of the tire to really get an accurate measurement. But I don't see anything that tells me that there's anything going on with my suspension or my ride on my truck. So I'm good to go with putting these tires on in any location on my truck whatsoever. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so I've established that all 4 of my tires are worn pretty much all evenly, so it doesn't really matter what location they go on when I put them back on the truck. The only issue that's going to come in is my sensors. On my truck, if the sensors do not go back on the same location they went off, then I have to reprogram the sensors in order for the computer on my truck to pick up the new location of the sensors. I haven't identified the location of my tires. I haven't put any markings on them to indicate where they came off of. It's not a big deal. I have a reprogrammer. It only takes a minute to reprogram. However, because my tires are all worn evenly, they're going to go on in any location on the truck, and I'm just going to reprogram my sensors. If I had 2 tires that were more worn than the other 2 tires, then I would put the 2 tires that had more wear left on them on the rear of my truck, because that's my drive axle. You always want your best tires on your drive axle because that's the one that propels your vehicle forward. And when you're driving through things like heavy slush or rain, where your tires have the ability to hydroplane and ride on top of the water of the slush, you want your best tires on your drive axle. If I had a front-wheel drive vehicle, then I would put the 2 worn tires, the 2 more worn tires on the rear, and put my 2 best tires in the front. Okay? So that's what you'd always do with tires that are unevenly worn. Okay? So we're ready to go and put our tires back on. Junior, that's not how you use jack stands. And where'd you get the coffee? You didn't even ask me if I wanted one. All right, so we're going to get started on removing my winter tires. However, one of the first things you need to remember is that if you don't loosen your wheel nuts, your lug nuts, before you lift up the vehicle, you could be in a world of hurt because your tire is just going to spin, and unless you've got some special equipment, you're not going to be able to loosen those lug nuts. So the first thing you got to remember is loosen the lug nuts on your tire before you raise the vehicle up. Now, does not mean take the lug nuts off. That's dangerous, very dangerous. You only need to loosen them so that once you have the tire lifted off the ground and you have no resistance, it's very easy to get those lug nuts off. So the first thing you got to remember, loosen your lug nuts. Now, I could use a big extension breaker bar to try to get these off, but I'm only going to use the equipment that came with my truck, so you can see what you would have to do if you didn't have any other equipment except what came with your truck. So this is the tire iron that comes with my truck. It's kind of dual purpose, right? It will fit the lug nuts, and I can loosen them, plus it fits onto the extension on my jack, and I can use it to raise and lower the jack. So it's dual purpose, it's great. However, it's not very long, so it doesn't have a whole lot of leverage. But one of the easiest ways to get this off is to use your foot. If you cannot take these off with good old Purginator power, which I did just there, then another way to get them off is to make sure you align your tire wrench and have it nice and snug on the lug nut. Align the tire wrench so it's parallel to the ground, and then just give it a kick. And it's fairly easy to get it off that way. Again, you don't have to loosen these a whole lot, just enough so that they're loose, but they're not too loose that the tire is going to flip off of the hub and cause your vehicle to drop. Okay? So I'm just going to continue to loosen all of these and make sure that, oh, that was a little tight. Make sure that they're not going to be too tight for me before I lift my vehicle off the ground. And the last one, pretty tight. Okay, now I'm pretty happy that all of these lug nuts are loose enough that I can raise my truck up. Good to go. Now I'm going to find the lift point for my truck.
Alright, so on my truck, on the case that the jack extensions come in are the lift point diagrams for the 3 different vehicles that this jack was supplied for. You can see that my vehicle, which is a 1500, not the 2500 or the 3500, and not the cargo van, my vehicle's lift points might be in slightly different spots than the other vehicles. So I got to make sure I'm looking at the lift point for my vehicle. Now this one here, you can see it points to the lift point for the front of the vehicle if I'm replacing a front tire. And over here, then I have the lift point for the rear of the vehicle if I'm replacing the rear tire. So what I need to do now is to get underneath there and look for this lift point. I can see my reference is this cab washer, that a bushing that is a rubber damper bushing for the cab, so that the chassis and the cab have some rubber damper between them. That's kind of my reference point for where my lift point is for the jack. And again, because my jack just has that single point, it needs to go in a certain location so that it doesn't slip off of the frame. Okay, it's not like this jack here that has the slots that will fit into a particular spot on the frame and it won't be able to slip. Mine, because it is just that single post jack, needs to go in a particular location so that it doesn't slip. Okay, so I'm going to go look for that lift point under the front. I'm not replacing the rear right this second, so I'm not worried about this. I'm worried about this lift point. Let's go see if we can find it. Alright, so now we're underneath the vehicle, and you can see there's my reference point. There's the bushing that was on the diagram for my reference point, and so I can see that right underneath that bushing and along the frame, and this is the frame here, that's the frame of the truck, right along the frame is that lift point for the jack. It's right underneath there and you can see it. And so that's where I'm going to place the top of my jack, right in that spot right there. And that will be a safe location that the manufacturer tells me I can lift the front of my vehicle. I don't want to go too far back on the frame, which is why it's not back there, because then I'll lift up the entire truck, which is way harder on the jack. I only want to lift up the front right side of the vehicle, and so that's my lift point there. Let's get ready to lift. Alright, many of you are not going to have the same type of jack that I use for my truck. You're going to have this type of a scissor jack. And so I just wanted to point out that on your vehicles that you most likely are going to be working on, you're going to need to find the pinch weld location where your scissor jack fits. Your scissor jack just doesn't fit anywhere along the vehicle. It fits in a particular spot. So you're going to have to check your owner's manual or the cases that came with your lift kits and check out where your scissor jack fits. You're going to have a particular type of a cradle on the top of your jack where it fits into the pinch weld. I'll put a link to other videos that show you where pinch welds are on your vehicles. But obviously mine doesn't have a pinch weld. Your vehicle most likely is going to have one. You need to find the right location. Alright, so just before we lift today, I want to also point out another thing that we should be doing before we get to the point where we actually use that jack to lift up my truck. The kit comes with these wheel chocks, these metal wheel chocks, and we're going to put those over the back tire. Hey Junior, how you doing? Say hi to everybody. We're going to put them along the in the front and the rear, on the rear of the vehicle, on the rear wheels, to make sure that the vehicle doesn't shift while it's up on that little jack. We don't want the vehicle rolling or potentially shifting when we're lifting it, because once the wheel's off of the hub and that jack comes off of the frame, then we're in a world of hurt. And we don't want that. The other thing is, whenever we're working, if we ever have a jack stand available, we always use a jack stand. The jack stand, again, is a mechanical device. It will never come down on us. So once we have that jack stand up and supporting underneath the frame, then we don't have to worry about that jack potentially slipping off and having the truck come down on us. So whenever we can, we're going to use a jack stand. Now you probably won't have one on the side of the road, but what I would recommend is if you can find a stump or a log or something that you can stick underneath your vehicle, you could do that. Now many times what people do, especially if they're putting on the spare tire, is they will actually use the tire and the tire rim to go underneath the car or truck along the frame, so that if anything did happen to the jack while you have the vehicle jacked up, at least it's only going to go onto your spare tire, or not your spare tire, but your actual tire. At least it's only going to go onto your tire, and it's not going to drop all the way to the ground. If you're on the side of the road and that jack comes out for whatever reason, and your vehicle drops right to the ground, then you got much more serious problems. Okay, you can see where I've placed my two wheel chocks that come with the kit. Now I'm ready to go ahead and get my jack underneath my lift point and get this tire off the ground. Okay, you can see that I've got my extensions already put together like I showed you earlier. I'm just going to slip this into the slot, and you can see that by simply turning the shaft, I can either move my jack up or down. And again, I can move the jack around as long as I don't bend this at an angle where the extension comes up. Okay? I'm ready to go. Now I don't want to put a third extension on because it's way too long. I don't really need it. So I'm just going to leave this for now. I'm going to slide this underneath here like this. I'm going to get it roughly located around where it should be. And then I'm going to use this. I'm not going to put this on right now. It's going to be way too much hassle to do this. I'm going to need it though once it starts to get some weight on the jack, because I'm not going to be able to turn this with my hands. As strong as the Burgonator is, can't turn this with my hands when I'm trying to lift my truck. Okay? She's almost encountering the lift point. We'll give you a close-up view here in a second. Okay, you can see the jack now. It's kind of extended, and you can see that it is encountering the lift point that we talked about, right close to this rubber damper there. And so now that it's engaged the frame and we're ready to start lifting, we're going to start turning this thing and see if we can get this thing off the ground. Now, once we get it lifted up to the point where the wheel is going to come off the ground, then we're going to put our jack stand in. And we're going to put our jack stand in right underneath here so that we help to support this should that jack, for whatever reason, slip off of there. Okay? Okay, it slipped on there. Now I can use this to start to lift my vehicle. Now it's hard to see, but my tire is starting to come off the ground.
Hey, look at me, Burgonator. I figured out how to use a remote microphone. Ha ha ha, you guys are in trouble now. Look at me, look at how fast I move. Oh man, I'm good.
Okay, so now we can see that our jack is lifting from the lift point that we were told we were supposed to. You can see that I've got my jack stand over here supporting, just in case anything happens to this. And my wheel is now off the ground. As you can see, it'll turn freely, and I'm ready to take that tire off. Good to go. What do you think, Junior? Still drinking coffee. Ugh.
Okay, so I'm ready to take this tire off. I've got all of my lug nuts off, and it's ready to go. My jack is nicely supported with my jack stand. The tire is loose. Now, you can see that it just took a little bit of effort to get that tire off. Sometimes this tire does get stuck on the hub, though. The rim, when it's been on there for a long time, especially if it's been on in the winter, there's a lot of salt and corrosion and crud, and that stuff gets seized on there, and it can be really difficult to get the hub off. Sometimes you're going to need to use a mallet hammer and give it a few taps around the edge of the rim. Sometimes that doesn't work, and what you really got to do is you got to get nasty and start kicking on it like this, and kicking on it at different spots, and it can loosen it up. Now, to prevent this from getting seized on there, I'm going to put some lithium grease all around this hub and on the wheel nuts before I put my summer tire on. And that's the reason why this was so easy to get off, is because we had put grease on here when we put these winter rims on. So it's very easy for it to come off. So I'm going to take this tire off, and I'm going to show you a couple things that I do before I put my other rim back on. Okay, you you can actually see the spots where the white lithium grease was still actually quite fluid and was lubricating the rim, and so that's why it was so easy for it to come off. While I've got my tire off, lots of times I will check my brakes to see what condition my brakes are in. We're not going to get into that today. But what I am going to do is I'm going to apply some lithium grease. Now if you don't have any lithium grease, any kind of grease in your garage, or I always like to pick up some of this high-performance marine grease because this is water insoluble, which means that water will not break it down. And if you need to, if you don't have a spray can of this white lithium grease, you can just pop this open, put your finger in there, wipe it around both the hub and the studs, the wheel nuts, the wheel studs, and that will prevent this thing from seizing on there. It'll be way easier to get it off when it's time to put my winters back on. Okay, got it? Good. Now let's say it is corroded and it's really in rough shape, then what you're going to want to do is to clean this thing up before you put your grease on or your wheel back on, because you don't want corrosion preventing this from sitting on there absolutely straight, because that's what's going to cause your tire to have some uneven wear. So in the garage here, of course, we have the air tools, and I would get in here and I would clean this all up with the air tool with the wire brush on it, steel brush on it. If you don't have one, you can use the good old-fashioned handheld steel brush, and you need to clean all this corrosion and rust off of there. After you've done that, then apply the white lithium grease or your marine grease, and you're good to go. Okay? Now, before I go too far with my winter tire, I'm going to use my tire chalk to actually mark where the tire came from. If I want to, I'll put it right back on in the wintertime when it gets fall. I'm going to put it on the same location, and that will make it a whole lot easier for my truck to then tell where my sensors are. Then I don't have to reprogram my sensor. So I'm going to mark my tire with the tire chalk. Very easy to do. On the inside of the tire, in a dry spot, it's on the right side and it's the front. So I'm going to put F, right, front, right, or you can put right front, whatever you like. F and R means it's right front, front right. Okay? Now I can put this away for the summer. Okay, so I'm going to apply some lithium grease now. I'm going to be careful not to get it on my brake rotor, because if you get grease on your brake rotor, it's going to be very difficult to stop. So just a little bit of grease on there, making sure you get some on the wheel studs. And again, if you don't have this, get yourself any grease that you got from in the garage, any tube of grease, get your finger in there and wipe it around in here. It'll make it so much easier when you take the hub off next time. Now I'm ready to go with putting my summer tire on. I've got my wheel nuts ready to go here. And many times I see guys trying to struggle putting tires on like this, but you can't see what you're doing down there. And I know that the tires can be pretty heavy, so you can't see anything line up. So what I do is I get down there, I put my knee on the ground, I get my hand ready to use as a lever. I line up the stud and the hole in the wheel. I get close, I use my knee and my hand to lift it in place, rotate it so it's in the right spot, hold my knee against the tire so it doesn't fall off, and then starting at the bottom, I start to thread the wheel nuts on. Now you want to make sure that you get 3 or 4 good turns on the wheel nuts before you start putting the wrench on there. Why? Because you don't want to cross thread the threads inside the wheel nut with the stud itself. That will make it a very difficult time for you to try to tighten that thing down. You're going to have a mess. So make sure you get them thoroughly started, and then it's going to be a whole lot easier when you get your wrench on there. Now in this case here, because I don't have an impact, I am going to tighten these right down until they're fairly snug. Because this wrench is kind of a pain to turn around, especially the ones that are on the bottom here, because you can't actually turn it, it's too close to the ground. On the top it's alright, because you can make a full revolution, but on the bottom you can't. So I'm just going to tighten these all up by hand until they're fairly snug, and then get my wrench. So what I want to do now is I want to start tightening these up so that the hub goes on there straight. And the way I do that is I go in a cross pattern, in a star pattern. I don't want to go in a circle, because if I go in a circle, the wheel could snug up and tighten onto the hub crooked. We don't want that. So you want to tighten one up on this side, then on that side, then this side, then that side. Go across. That's how you tighten a wheel on a hub. Now sometimes when you're tightening, you have to wiggle the hub a little bit to make sure that it's going on properly. Okay, now that one is pretty snug, and I'm going to start over here. Now I'm actually going to rotate the tire until it's in a good position, and sometimes you can actually just use the tire like this. It makes it a little bit quicker than trying to do this. Okay, now that one's pretty snug. Now I know that those two wheel nuts have tightened the hub on nice and straight. Now I can go ahead and finish my star pattern with the rest of these.
Oh man, look at how fast I'm moving. Like Spider-Man doesn't move that fast. Whew. Speed demon. Look at him go. Look at him go. Look at the torque on that guy. Oh, he's a madman, that Burgonator.
Okay, so I've got all 6 of my lug nuts nice and snugged up there, and I've tightened them fairly well. It's about as much as I can tighten them with the wheel loose like this. Now I'm going to lower the jack so that there's pressure from the weight of the truck on this tire, which prevents it from spinning. But before I put the full weight on, I'm going to tighten these up even more. Okay?
Okay, come on, Bergen. Get it on there. Get it on there. Let's go. Let's go. Fast. Ooh, madness.
So now there's weight on this tire, so that means that the tire won't spin when I tighten these up. And again, I want to make sure that I'm tightening in a star pattern so that when it's torquing down, it's torquing it down nice and straight. So I'm going to use a fair bit of weight to tighten these up. I'm going up like this as opposed to going down, just because at this point it gives me a little better control. I can feel how tight I'm making the torque on it. Now, if you have a torque wrench, you can use your torque wrench. We don't have a torque wrench on the side of the road or in the garage or on the driveway. So we're just going by feel. And if you can tighten these with this wrench, with this long, this length of a wrench, if you can tighten these as hard as you can tighten, you're torquing them down pretty good. So I'm going to go around again, and I'm going to tighten these as tight as I can get them.
Come on, Bergen. Put your back into it. There you go. Crank on her. Come on now. Attaboy, attaboy.
Okay, and that wheel is done. Now we can put the full weight of the truck on this tire. Alright, now that I've got all those torqued down as about as much as I can torque them down, I'm going to take my jack out. Before I take my jack out, can't forget to take my jack stand out. Otherwise, it's going to rest on the jack stand and we won't be able to get the torque. Okay, take my jack stand out and lower the full weight of the truck on the wheel.
Go, Bergen. Go, go, go. Oh.
We're done. All you need to do now is repeat 3 more times. Good to go. Junior. Oh, forgot. All right, I just wanted to give you guys a tip when you are doing the swaps on your vehicles, summer to winter tires, winter to summer tires, or just change the flat tire on the side of the road. A lot of vehicles have these chrome caps. Mine does on the wheel nuts. And sometimes over time, those chrome caps can get damaged, worn, get some corrosion on them. And when you put your wheel wrench or your socket on there, they can get stuck inside there. So I just want to show you a quick tip on how to get these things off without banging and damaging them any more than they are. So this one here is actually in pretty good shape. I'm just going to put it back on and demonstrate for you. Okay, so that one's pretty well tightened up. If I take this off, it comes out of the socket really easily. This one over here, when I take this one off, it doesn't come out of the socket very easily. And instead of getting a screwdriver or some pliers or something to try to dig this thing out of here, here's a quick tip. Now I'm just using the socket and the extension, but it could be your wheel wrench. Just thread it back onto the stud, just a few threads, wiggle it, it comes off, and you're good to go. Okay? So that's a quick tip for you from the Burgonator.